and projecting these things outward into technology.
Right, and that process with Jung, is this what is called individuation?
Yes, so the way to develop this process towards human beings that are again multidimensional, able to create their physical surrounding, change it, upgrade it, upgrade the stuff we are made of, and actively create out of thin air would be that stairway which Jung developed until the point of what you would call individuation, which would be connecting to the deeper self.
Right.
And you have to see Jung's tradition in line with the great mystical traditions, which were like delineating this curriculum to develop this multidimensional being, which in a prior interview we discussed was which we called actually the ending, the completing of the creation or of the creature, meaning that the caterpillar would become the butterfly. So this is a curriculum of development and Jung developed it until individuation. And then my work is actually the next step, which is then the step beyond individuation back to the collective unconscious. And the collective unconscious would be, as it were, the deepest levels of reality or of matter.
Of mind.
Yes, but in terms of this curriculum, these steps towards enlightenment, Jung called it individuation. Then you find thus that it's not just a matter of sitting down and saying, we know that beliefs create, so I need to image that perfect house that I want and stuff like that. That's part of that caricature of this whole process.
Right, because it's not about the house. It's
No.
about you are the house, and you are the red car, and you are all of that.
Yes, exactly. What the house that I want is the self, and that beautiful mansion with these big windows, whatever. We know in dreams that represents the self. And we know that, for instance, precious stones represents the self. So all of these things that we would want to attract with the so-called law of attraction is the self. And it's not so you don't attract it. You have to become aware that you are the diamond.
Right.
And you are the quantum technology, and you are the mansion, and when you see that, then we go, so this curriculum ends up with a plan, because the vision, you see, the vision has to come from the deepest levels of the self in order to create itself.
Yeah.
It cannot come from the surface, because the surface is disconnected from.
Yeah.
But so what we find is that towards individuation, the self with a capital S connects to a shared vision. And the shared vision that is like programmed into reality, the deepest levels of reality, that vision leads to a upgrade of the frequency, an upgrade of the being, an upgrade of matter.
We are there now.
Yes, we are at the point of what you would call an upgrade in the self towards a higher octave, which means an upgrade in the atom, and which means an upgrade of the earth. And so this is not something that that your ego would conjure up. It is something that you deeply connect to this unconscious, then connect to the deeper self. Surrender to the self. This process is not a process of this ego.
Now, I think a lot of people have trouble with the ego because Jung does not disqualify the ego, because you need to go through the ego.
Absolutely.
And it's not like you were saying, okay, we don't need the ego and we can just skip that and we go through to the collective right away. Why is the ego so? Because people mistake individuation for being an egoist.
That's exactly the look, because they don't understand the mind, and without the ego, the whole journey would be meaningless. The ego is almost like, you could almost say that the whole journey of this, we could say the 26,000 years journey, is revolves around the ego, the mystery of the ego, because the ego, without the self, that part of the self detaching from the whole, in order to return, there could not be self-awareness. So without the ego, you would find a kind of a relapse back into the amniotic stages of awareness, where there was this connect. The original indigenous lived in this world as self. They knew it was self. They knew it was not physical or and external to us, but there was no self-awareness. So the ego is, without the ego, there is no self-awareness. So a lot of the new age that has declared war on the ego, what it actually constitutes is a kind of abortion of the caterpillar, abortion of the butterfly, and a kind of a return into the womb, the Euroboric womb of creation. And so we would, what I would say, and what I think Jung would say, is that the ego would need to connect to the shadow, and out of that you would get the self.
That is individuation.
Yeah,
When you start to connect to the self.
exactly. And the self is what they would call the heavenly man or woman, which is already. And so it's not about sitting down as ego and trying to create miracles, which is most of what you find in the law of attraction, or in a lot of these things that want to help teach you how to create miracles. The process would lead by connecting the opposites within to a surrender to the self. The self is the real self. So the self, it almost, you would be like encountering an alien within, because you don't even know that that's your true self. You have been living in the ego, which is very necessary, but that which has to return to the whole. It's a part of the self. And then the self, the surrender to the self, then the whole landscape changes, because to reach to the self, you need self-awareness and work on the shadow. And then at the self and beyond, you need faith and belief and the vision. But the self is the miracle maker. So the surrendering to the self is what creates these miracles.